dark way too long in the streets. That bright smile long gone been replaced. From ear to ear, I see that fear in your face. Tell me when the last time you felt safe, cause there's some evil people in the streets. Evil at your front door, creeping while you sleep. It's time to raise up, show that evil we ain't weak. We don't turn the other cheek, I can show you how to be strong. Come on, follow me. Heard you looking for a hero. Well, look up. No more running from the bad guy. I'ma stare him in the eye like, what's up? I know the journey got hard for a minute, but I ain't giving this up. Yeah, I got the heart of a champion. If I get knocked down, I get back up. We go through bad days, hard times, low pay, high crime, pathways to a life without sunshine. I'm the lifeline. With this lifeline, gonna be the pipeline, shining in the nighttime. Bet on me to swoop down. I'ma go toe to toe. Already know that I'm never gonna back down. Bet on me to stand tall. I take on anything for my crew. Bet I risk it all. Wicked people in the streets. Corruption in the politics and the police. It's time to raise up. Take a stand against the seat. We won't take a back seat. I can show you how to be strong. Come on, follow me. Heard you looking for a hero. Well, look up. No more running from the bad guy. I'ma stare him in the eye like, what's up? I know the journey got hard for a minute, but I ain't giving this up. Yeah, I got the heart of a champion. If I get knocked down, I get back up. 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 If I get knocked down, I'ma get back up. If I get knocked down, I'ma get back up. If I get knocked down, I'ma get back up. I'ma get back up. I'ma get back up. I'ma. Heard you looking for a hero. Well, look up. Yeah, no more running from that bad guy. Don't worry about it. I'm right here. What's up? I know that journey been hard for you. Okay, I ain't giving up. We ain't giving up. I got the heart of a champion. If I get knocked down, I get back up.
What's going on, y'all? All right, hit the like, hit the sub up. We're going to get into it. This is going to be one of my better lives for sure. And I apologize about the lighting. This window is not blackoutable. So when I do these lives during the day, the lighting is just not great. But definitely let's get into this. There are some analytics, some video breakdown, and like, it's not fun, right? It's not fun to always be in the trade rumors. It always polarizes the fans. Some fans be like, yo, I really like Pascal Siakam. I want him back. And some people are like, no, I'm ready to move on. And it usually does divide people, and it tends to get a little bit controversial. And I would like to look at this as the opportunity to examine other players on other teams, right? This is something that a lot of fan bases don't usually have a good perspective of. Who is Cade Cunningham? How good is Jalen Green? What about Onyeka Okongwu, right? Unless you watch these dudes 82 games or studied their film, you probably don't have a clear idea. So you Google them and you see 7 points per game and you assume they're a scrub. And I just think that there's so much more to basketball. And so last year when the Raptors were in the trade rumors around the midseason, we were talking a lot about the New Orleans Pelicans guys. Well, hopefully this Raptor fan base, especially the fan base that watches a lot of Pinsire basketball videos, has a renewed appreciation for how good Herb Jones and Dyson Daniels and Trey Murphy are. Well, today you're going to get a renewed, hopefully fresh perspective on just how good Onyeka Okongwu and A.J. Griffin are. And I'm not trying to hype these guys up as like some future MVPs or for sure all-stars, but I do want to talk about how they fit into what the Raptors are trying to do. I want to talk about what makes them good, how good they are for their age. We'll look at some comparables. We'll compare Onyeka's defense to Pascal's. We'll talk about what he does and how it fits. Truth is, if the Raptors Summer League roster has taught us anything, there is a lack of blue chip youth talent on this team. That's what happens when you go 3 years without developing anybody. I mean, I guess that's also what happens when Justin Shemhenny gets waived. Scotty Barnes is not playing Summer League, obviously. He's too good for that. Doesn't have anything to prove. Precious Achiuwa probably should have played Summer League. They chose not to. And, you know, a player like Christian Koloko is just out. Would have probably helped. But if anything, you know, fielding the worst Summer League roster, while technically doesn't mean anything, It is a glaring sign that you simply lack blue chip youth prospects. Look at the Detroit Pistons, right? They got 4 guys who will probably be your first option or at least your best player. That's kind of weird to think about, especially for the Raptors, right? Who are prioritizing youth and development for the last 7 years. They've always had a sort of pipeline of next up guys. You know, when Kawhi moved on, boom, it was Pascal and OG's turn, right? When DeMar moved on, it was a step up for somebody else. It's always been that sort of progression, and it just hasn't happened. And now, you know, it's like in Vegas when you crap out, or like when you max out your credit card. That's kind of where the Raptors are right now. They need to replenish that youth, the package of youth that they used to have. And the easiest and surefire way to do that is to make a very calculated gamble on a couple of prospects in a trade for Pascal Siakam. We're also going to talk about what the Raptors are eventually trying to do. We'll touch on Summer League at the end, and I'll flash you a couple of trades that I think would help round out this roster. So first, let's talk about Onyeka Okongwu, right? Now, I love this player. I think I might be his biggest fan across the board, right? Some of the stuff that he does, let me just flash this up and load this video up. Now, when he came out of college, he was often compared to Bam Adebayo, right? As he lived up to that billing or potential. Offensively, no, not yet, right? It might still come. But defensively, he's right there. Look at his technique defensively, and you will see that both at the rim and on the perimeter, this is one of the most switchable bigs in the NBA. To say that he is a top 20-ish defender in the NBA right now is not actually a stretch at all. Now, the Hawks gave up a lot, right? They play Bogdanovich, big minutes. They play Trae Young, who might be the worst defender in the NBA, big minutes. And that puts a lot of pressure on your 2 defenders that are actually good. Well, I would say 3 defenders who are actually good, DeJounte Murray and Onyeka Okongwu and DeAndre Hunter. So I think that for a guy, I mean, you can also obviously say that Clint Capella is not a bad defender at all, but I think Onyeka is a really huge part of what this team is building going forward. And obviously, in order to get something, you're going to have to give up something. And just look at his technique here. He's guarding, an all-star in Karl-Anthony Towns. He just blocks him clean. That's a one-on-one situation here. It's worth noting that in isolation, for players who covered 100 possessions in isolation, Onyeka Okongwu last year was the 3rd best player in isolation, behind OG Anunoby and Patrick Williams. That is extremely exceptional because he is a big, and you typically do not expect bigs to be able to cover this well in isolation. AG saying, sorry, Rob, I don't see the hype, but he's okay. But no, okay, now keep watching. I think you'll see the hype. I think you'll see the potential, because it's not just the defense, right? But in defensive situations, he is incredible. I believe he guarded, he forced opponents into 32% when he was switched. Look at just how shifty the player he's guarding is. That's a guard out there. And look at his feet. Look at his technique. He is able to contest everything. One of the most impressive games I watched was actually him against the Bucks, in which he basically shut the water off for Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? Like, he guarded him so well. Now, Giannis still got his points, but it was just harder than I had seen Giannis work in a long time. And it gave me a lot of shades of OG Anunoby. Now, if you have at least defensively, a 6'11" OG Anunoby who can guard at the rim like he's Rudy Gobert, obviously that's a bit of a stretch. He doesn't guard at the rim like Rudy Gobert, but he's really good. This creates such a defensive juggernaut for a team that already has Precious Achiuwa, OG Anunoby, and Scotty Barnes. I mean, shoot, man, that's not an easy guy to stop right there, right? That's Michael Porter Jr. That's LeBron James. That's Pascal Siakam. This guy had some really hard matchups this year, and that's Kevin Durant. Like, shoot, man. Like, he's blocking KD's shot. Like, you don't understand how hard that is to do. So this is not easy. Okay. Now you want to look at his defense and offense. Okay. Let's take a look at this, right? So in terms of true shooting percentage, he is 96 percentile. He takes a lot of really good shots close to the basket. His shot quality is not great because he doesn't attempt a lot of threes. It's going to be an inverse relationship. But he gets to the line increasingly, like, really well. And he doesn't shoot poorly when he gets there. He's gotten a lot better. Load creation portability is all going to be low, largely because analytics highly favor three-point shooters, and he just doesn't take a lot of threes. We'll get into whether or not I think he can take on a lot of threes. But his rim defense is incredible. I think the deflections are only going to go up. Crafted defense at plus minus is ahead of Pascal Siakam, right? To this point. So, and I mean, this is, in my opinion, just going to get so much better when you put him in a system with other positive defenders, right? I think he can do way more than he's currently shown. Yeah. Watch Thompson, Detroit tonight. He's a natural baller. Yeah, Amen Thompson has been impressive. I thought he was injured, though. All right. So moving forward in terms of what I see from him, and I mean, look, like Pascal Siakam used to be this type of defender, right? A guy who could guard at the rim pretty well, switch out on the perimeter. We just didn't see a lot of that last year. So look, if you're the Raptors and you want to talk to Pascal Siakam and say, okay, man, like, we need you to get back to where you were before. Defensively, we'll lessen your load. Offensively, we'll lessen some of your minutes that you're playing. Okay. But he's still 29 and Onyeka's 22. And I think that makes a difference here, especially if you're building around a player who's also 21 years old right now. So I think you kind of get a lot of what Pascal Siakam was as a defender in Onyeka Okongwu without a lot of the isolation scoring package. But he is a good athlete. And I think that it could come. And I think that he could be a really reasonable passer. And I've really liked his basketball IQ in all the stuff that I've watched of Onyeka, like, over the last 3 years. I've really felt like he was a smart basketball player. Someone saying, apparently Pascal released a video yesterday. Yes, I saw it. And I do not see the farewell message that a lot of people are seeing there, but maybe I'm wrong. I believe he did follow Trae Young on Instagram. Some people are telling me that's new. Cool. Players follow each other for a million reasons. But yes, I do believe that the trade to Atlanta is the trade. Now, the question then becomes, is what's coming back really is the question. And I don't think that you make this trade without Onyeka Okongwu coming back. In terms of his shooting, like, okay, look, there are a lot of players, we've talked about them on this channel, who have evolved into stretch bigs, right? The thing you want to look for with stretch bigs and people, the players who have the potential to stretch out to that range, is really the mechanics, the form, the willingness, the confidence, etc. Right? Onyeka has not shot a lot of threes in his career to date, but he has made a few. And I think that if you look at his overall shooting progression from the line, I think there is some hope there that he can actually stretch out to three. So yeah, sometimes he misses clear of the rim. It's going to be not the greatest thing in the world. And sometimes they're going to be heaves. A lot of the threes that he took, just to be fair, were end of the clock threes and desperation heaves and stuff like that. So that's going to really impact his percentages. But you see a three like that, which was pretty early in the clock, and it's solid. It comes off his hand solid. The mechanics are decent. I mean, I think his hand placement is a little bit off. That's where I think, like, his hands are getting crossed, but I think, like, you can probably fix this. And there is some hope to say, outside of, like, I don't know, 17 feet, 18 feet, he's shown some potential there to be able to shoot there. So I don't know. I think if you're banking on a player to be able to do a little bit more than he's shown and take on a little bit more load and creation, I see a lot of Bam Adebayo here. I do. It's not just the physical form and the athleticism in terms of how he moves, but I mean, ask yourself the question, wouldn't Bam Adebayo fit really well with what the Raptors are trying to do? Now, what complicates this more than anything is you just signed a player to $80 million who definitively cannot shoot. And this is Onyeka Okongwu's shot chart. And you can sort of see it there in terms of league average versus, below league average. You're seeing like he's like slightly below league average outside the paint, right? But it's not abysmal. It's not at all abysmal, right? Inside the paint, of course, he is absolutely dominant. And there is a reason why he's like 96th, 97th percentile in terms of true shooting. He is absolutely a really great finisher inside. He takes really smart shots. He doesn't force anything. And he has really good touch around the rim. So moving on. To one of my favorite young players in the NBA, A.J. Griffin, the guy we saw in the opening kind of bury the Raptors on that smart get behind the defense, got behind OG and Scotty, and finished at the rim. Thought it was a really interesting. Okay, let's take a look. Now, what do I like about AJ? Honestly, there's so much to like about him, right? And people talk about his defense being really bad. I think his defense was above average for a rookie, in all honesty. He has really long wingspan. He can bother shots. He can block shots. I know that perception taints reality when it comes to young prospects. But honestly, man, like this guy has top end lottery potential. I know he slid down to 16th because of the injury. But were it not for the injury, I sincerely believe this was a top 7 pick last year. Like I would have taken him over Ben Mathurin, eyes closed, wouldn't even look. So all of you people out there saying, well, the Raptors, if they could just get Ben Mathurin, I would take anything back in exchange if we just get Ben Mathurin. I think this is a player who's better than Benedict Mathurin. Now, that's a very unpopular take, right? Because one guy was a 6th pick and the other guy was a 16th pick. And I think psychologically, where a guy is picked continues to impact his value forever. No matter how good he becomes, it will never quite be as great as if he was picked higher. Case in point, Nikola Jokic. It took 2 MVPs and a championship for people to realize that this guy was the best player in the world. If he was the 1st overall pick or the 2nd overall pick, like in 2013, 2014, like whenever he was drafted, 2014, 2013, 2013, I think. Wait, when was Nikola Jokic drafted? 2014. So if he was the number 1 pick in 2014, I think it would have taken people maybe 3 years to figure out that he was going to be one of the top 10 players in the NBA. Instead, it took way longer. Why? Why does it take so long? Because he's a 2nd round pick. So where you're drafted, the same thing with OG, same thing with Pascal, it just happens. So, yeah, like if you're a young prospect out there, there's a lot of work you have to put in, but you have to understand where you're picked is going to stick with you for a while. And it's hard to shake. So AJ Griffin, the perception is so much worse than the reality of who he is. If I told you this guy was a top 5 pick last year, honestly, he didn't underperform for a top 5 pick at all. Okay. He is creative off the bounce. He has a wide range of, ways to get his shot off. He's shifty. He's bursty. He's crafty. Okay. If you're telling me this guy's going to be a 2-time, 3-time, 4-time, 5-time All-Star, I certainly would not doubt it at all. Look at this package. I mean, how many players on your team can create a shot the way this guy can create a shot? I'm being honest. Like, look at the package off the dribble. I mean, that's not a bad defender right there. I mean, well, it's Norman Powell. He's not the greatest defender, but boom, triple threat. He's a 3-level scorer. He can get in the paint. He can finish there. I mean, he's got deadly. And when I say deadly, I mean deadly 3-point range, right? If you're talking about players to pair next to a Scotty Barnes and an OG Anunoby, what you're looking for really is a guy who can get his own and put some pressure on the rim. And, this whole 0.5 basketball that you're trying to force here, it doesn't really work if a guy can't collapse the defense the way this guy can. And look at his shot chart as a rookie. Honestly, man, this is so impressive. Offensively, it's so impressive. Yeah, don't let the raw numbers fool you. I mean, in spurts, this guy was incredible. right? And the Hawks were a dysfunctional mess last year. So if we're willing to account for, okay, well, Scotty struggled, Gary struggled, et cetera, all these guys struggled in this system because the system didn't make a hell of a lot of sense. Well, you know what? The coach got fired in this system, and this system didn't make a hell of a lot of sense either. I think there's a lot of untapped potential on the Atlanta Hawks roster, just as much as there's untapped potential on the Raptors roster, right? I mean, this is just a guy. Like, I'm just being honest. Like, y'all know that I have come a long way on Grady Dick, right? You know that I now think that he's a really good player and that a really good young prospect. But I'm being straight up. Like, I think AJ Griffin has a much higher upside than Grady Dick. So everyone prioritizing Kobe Buffkin, right? I don't have anything negative to say about Kobe. I think he looked really good in Summer League, but I think AJ Griffin has a slightly higher upside than him. Injury history, be damned. If he's healthy, right? I mean, he was relatively healthy last year. So, I mean, I want you to take a look at, okay, so here's the thing. During Summer League, one of the broadcasters during the last game that Grady played against the Detroit Pistons talked about how Cade Cunningham would have added 17 wins last year to the Detroit Pistons. And I nearly lost my lunch on that comment because it's so absurd. But that is the narrative, right? That's how good Cade Cunningham is, right? Well, wrong. Because honestly, at 21 years old, as a second-year player, he was barely better than AJ Griffin, right? The defensive offense, I mean, it's a completely different, type of player in terms of load and maximization. And yeah, Cade faced double teams and triple teams, et cetera, because he was the guy who was going to take a large volume of shots. But I think that also has to do with his shot selection. I think that also has to do with the athleticism and basketball IQ. But honestly, if you inverted these, if you flipped them, if I had flipped them, let's just say creatively I'd flipped them, would you really be able to tell the difference between these two players? I mean, obviously, yes, like portability, load creation, all of these things are going to matter. But if you're trying to build around Scotty, you don't even need that stuff. That's my point. What you need is secondary creation. What you need is a guy who can get to the rim. You need as a guy who can finish at an elite level. What you need is a guy who is in the 90th percentile, I think, already in shooting. 90th percentile in shooting quality, 51st percentile as a rookie in terms of true shooting percentage. That's very elite, and it's not like he can't create, and it's not like he had low usage or that he was just standing in corners. I mean, a lot of his shots were self-created, and he created really well out of those situations for a rookie. Again, rebounding was decent. Rim defense was okay. He contested at the rim. He was pretty versatile in terms of his defensive matchups. He guarded ones, twos, threes, no problem, right? He wasn't great at it. But I think that he can get better. I think he can be a better defender long-term than Gary Trent Jr. And I think his defensive upside is pretty much on par with a Grady Dick. So, and I mean, the long arms are definitely going to help him, right? So this is where I'm at with him. Like, I'm not saying that he's a better prospect than Cade Cunningham. I'm just saying the gap is not nearly as large as you would think between a first overall pick and a 16th overall pick. I just don't think it's that large. Now that's going to be very controversial for a lot of people out there, but those people just aren't as high on AJ Griffin as I am. So I understand that. But I will tell you, Hoop Intellect, shout outs to Hoop Intellect. I think their last mock draft of 2022, okay, this is right before the draft happened. I think 5 days before the draft happened, okay? Just to let you know how much things can shift once a player is actually drafted versus before a player is drafted. So y'all know that prior to the draft actually happening, Jabari Smith Jr. was supposed to be the first overall pick. Paolo was supposed to be the third overall pick, et cetera. Dyson Daniels was supposed to be a mid first rounder, et cetera, but then he goes 8th. Do you know where AJ Griffin was picked in the mock draft by Keandre over at Hoop Intellect and where he was on a lot of mock drafts? He was 6th. He started the year for a lot of people at 5th, 5th, 4th, 6th, 7th. He slid because of injuries. So if injuries aren't a concern right now, and if your medical team can check him out, then yes, it is a lot like getting the 6th or 7th overall pick from last year's draft, because that's exactly where, in my opinion, he probably should have gone. I think if most GMs could do that draft again, and if his injury concerns were taken care of and the surgery that he had and the big injury he had to do was taken care of, I think a lot of people would have probably picked him 9th or 10th. you know? So you're getting a guy with that level of upside, you know, in this trade back. And that's exactly what you need. That's exactly what you need. You need a 20-year-old on a rookie deal, right? And yes, like this is the type of player, in my opinion, that can fit very well next to a Pascal Siakam. Sorry, next to a Scotty Barnes. So now let's talk about the roster, because obviously in this trade package, you're not trading Pascal Siakam for two young guys. The salaries would never make sense, right? So who are you actually trading for? Well, I think this is one way to go about it. And I'm not necessarily sure this is like the best way to go about it, but it's definitely one way to go about it, right? And this would be kind of clearing out some room and some space. Now, I'm not very big on Clint Capella or DeAndre Hunter, right? I'm not. But I'm definitely not big on them if they're coming onto a roster that already has Thaddeus Young and Chris Boucher. Technically, DeAndre Hunter is an upgrade over Thaddeus Young. He makes a lot of money, but I would argue in a few years that money's not going to look like a lot of money. Clint Capella, I think, can be a trade piece for you. I think some team is going to get desperate around the trade deadline and probably need a player that is exactly like this, right? A player who can, you know, guard the rim, a player who can gobble up rebounds. And you know what? Like maybe if the Raptors don't want to, play a guy like I don't know if Jakob Poeltl sours on the deal, because obviously before he signed, he was under the expectation that Fred VanVleet was coming back, and he probably signed under the assumption that, that Pascal Siakam would be here. I mean, I'm assuming that when those two things change, and one of them already has changed, well, he might actually change his mind on where he wants to be long-term. And I think that that might be a great thing, especially if you front load his contract, because now that contract is actually a very valuable trade piece. So if the Raptors see enough from Onyeka Okongwu at the trade deadline, well, you now have Clint Capella and Jakob Poeltl as trade pieces for, I don't know, guard help. You could also potentially trade Dennis Schroeder, who apparently thinks he is going to be the team's leader and starting point guard, according to media scrum yesterday, which was very weird to hear, right? I mean, this entire offseason we've been hearing Scotty's going to be point guard with Fred out, and now we've got Dennis Schroeder thinking that he might be starting point guard. So he walked it back a little bit later, but that will also be very interesting to sort of track out how that works out, because I certainly understand defensively why that makes a lot of sense. He is a decent point of attack defender, but offensively, I don't understand how you can. Well, you're not putting Scotty on the bench. You're probably not putting Jakob on the bench, and you're definitely not putting OG on the bench, which means that you're going to put Gary on the bench in order to start him, or in whatever trade you get for, and whatever you get back for Pascal Siakam, you're not getting a starter level player back, which I think would be weird and probably unlikely. Dennis Schroeder is just not that good. Okay. Like he's a rotation player. He's not a starting level point guard. And I just don't see, if you were trying to get Fred off the ball for Scotty, I don't understand why you would put Dennis Schroeder on the ball in spite of Scotty. That just makes no sense to me. So hopefully that gets worked out really soon. So I'm thinking that this is my big trade, right? Now, barring that, obviously, you can take Chris Boucher, Thaddeus Young out. You can take Clint Capella out, right? Even though I think Clint Capella probably has more value than Chris Boucher, and that's expiring. So it's kind of like you're taking something back. It also softens the hit for the Atlanta Hawks, because if you just trade Pascal straight up for DeAndre Hunter, Onyeka Okongwu, and A.J. Griffin, they actually go into, I believe they take back $6 million more in that salary. And that puts them into luxury tax territory, which is what they are trying to avoid right now. So you may have to find a third team. But again, that's hard, right? So you would find a third team for DeAndre Hunter, I guess, in that situation. And that third team would do some cap flexibility. I think that's really what the holdup is for the Raptors and the Hawks right now. If because Bogdanovic can't be traded and Kobe Buffkin can't be traded. DeAndre Hunter is the default choice. Clint Capella and DeAndre Hunter, not only from a contractual standpoint, but just from a roster standpoint, don't really fit the Raptors, right? Especially if they're committed long-term to Jakob Poeltl. So in this situation, you would need a third team to help you out. And that may be the holdup. It may just be that, hey, we're just looking for a third team to take DeAndre Hunter. That could be it. We're looking for a third team to take DeAndre Hunter that can give back the Raptors something that they value more than DeAndre Hunter right now. I will tell you, to anyone who has this idea that DeAndre Hunter is some elite 3-and-D guy, he is not. He is absolutely not. I asked the question of a Hawks fan in Raptors Twitter Spaces a couple of days ago, how much better is he than Jalen McDaniels? Honestly, it stumped them. He's not that much better than Jalen McDaniels. He's just paid 5 times as much as Jalen McDaniels, and that's just craziness. And he doesn't fit on the roster. He is 25 years old. It's not like you're banking on the upside of a 22-year-old, right? So that's where I'm at with that. Now, trade number 2, right? Okay, let's include Saddiq Bey in this. Let's get back even more value here. Let's give up Malachi Flynn and Saddiq Bey. This might be, an upside play for the Raptors where you get an upgrade on Malachi. You kind of clear out the glut of point guards that you have right now, especially if you view Scotty as a point. You do have Dennis Schroeder, Scotty Barnes, and you have Jeff Doughton Jr., right? Like you do have like 3 point guards here. And there's not really a lot of space for Malachi to get minutes here. And so you give him an opportunity really to go and play on a team where he might actually have an opportunity. And you take back Saddiq Bey in exchange for your troubles. And I think Saddiq is a really interesting player. I really liked him in Detroit. I don't understand why they got rid of him, but I think he fits a little bit better. Obviously, this means that the Raptors have way too many players. And then I think I would do something like this, right? Now, I like Chris Boucher a lot. I'm just struggling to see on a team with Onyeka Okongwu and Precious Achiuwa and Christian Koloko and all these guys, how he fits. So my trade would be to trade Chris Boucher and Thaddeus Young to the OKC Thunder for Davis Bertans, right? And a pick. I don't care which pick, just a future first-round pick. And I would extract that value. And from the OKC side of it, I think that they have an abundance of picks. There's no way they can use all of them. And I think that this is the type of move that helps you because it adds veteran presence to your locker room. It adds serviceable big. Potentially, it adds some Chet Holmgren injury insurance behind them. The OKC Thunder didn't really have a center last year. I think Chris Boucher kind of fits the way they want to play, fast, up and down the court. I think he could be a huge benefit to them. And, on a 2-year contract with Thad's expiring, I think that's a really good deal for them. I'm not sure the quality of first-round pick that you would get in that situation, but it would help. And for the Raptors side, Davis Bertans, a stretch big. You really don't have a lot of shooting among your bigs right now. Could be a serviceable guy. Could also be, a trade chip as a $17 million expiring in the next offseason. So anyways, that's my take on the Raptors, a potential fit trade with Pascal Siakam to the Atlanta Hawks. I think that this deal should happen. I think that it will happen at some point. It makes a lot of sense for both sides. From the Hawks side, if you're a Hawks fan tuning in saying, why are 2 of my best players going out for a guy who will not re-sign? I think that when you look at the Hawks roster that remains after this trade, you have Bogdanovic, you have Kobe Buffkin behind there. You have DeJounte. You have Trey. If you don't trade Clint Capella, well, you still have a center in there. You have Pascal Siakam. I think you have a lot of talent. You also do not completely deplete yourself of young talent. You still have Sharif Cooper. You may get Malachi Flynn back in this trade. You have Jalen Johnson. Yeah, it's not ideal to have to give up 2 of your 4 best young players in a trade, but you're going to have to give up something to get Pascal Siakam. I think if the Raptors opened the search up a little bit wider, if Pascal Siakam were willing to go to the OKC Thunder or, potentially the Dallas Mavericks, or I think within 2.5 weeks, once those rookies that were just drafted become tradable again, I think if you start opening this up a little bit wider, if Siakam can expand the number of teams he's willing to go to, I think potentially, you could have a better offer than this from another team. So I think from the Atlanta Hawks side, you're getting a player that's very much on the same level as DeJounte and Trey. In my honest opinion, I think all three of these guys could easily make a case for top 25 players. None of them can make a case for top 10 players, right? DeJounte is probably fringy 30, right? Top 30. Trey is probably fringe top 20. Siakam maybe top 25. I don't know. You could flip flop on them depending on what you value. You value two-way impact, then Siakam's the best player on your team. If you value offensive creation, perhaps Trae Young is the best player on your team. If you value upside combined with shiftiness, maybe DeJounte Murray is your guy. I don't know. But to me, this is like a soft big three, right? None of these guys is a top 10 player. None of these guys is an MVP candidate. But the three of them together could potentially get you really far in the playoffs. And look, I think that's worth it. I think that's worth taking a shot, especially if it doesn't absolutely kill your books. And it doesn't. In this case, it doesn't. And for a cap-conscious team, if Onyeka Okongwu becomes what y'all think he will become, you won't be able to afford him anyway. If A.J. Griffin, pops and he's like, I don't know, a 30 million, 25 million type of guy, you probably wouldn't be able to afford him anyway. So it's just one of those situations where, building around guys like this can be a little bit difficult, right? Guys like Trae Young, you do need a lot around him. I think the basketball synergistic fit sort of works, right? Granted, you could say you prefer shooting around Trae Young. You want more shooting, but I think he provides shooting. And I think for Siakam, having Trae Young and Bogdanovic is just a really good fit. I think it can unlock him. I think you can get like a 27 point per game, solid-ish defense. He won't have as much of the load. He'll probably not play as many minutes. He doesn't have to bang with bigs because he'll probably still have Clint Capella in this case. I really think that the Atlanta Hawks could be a really good team if they trade for Pascal Siakam. For the Raptors side, what is the upside? What is the reasoning for a trade like this? Honestly, Vision 6-9, man. I think you get two young pieces, an A.J. Griffin and Onyeka Okongwu that just really fit what you're trying to do as a basketball team. You're trying to get talented. You're trying to get talent, upside, youth, guys who play the right way, guys who are smart, 0.5 basketball. All of these things, I think, are what these two players bring to the table for the Toronto Raptors. I think they bring I think both players project as starters in the NBA. If Grady Dick also projects as a starter, Scotty's a starter. You could, if you develop this right, I mean, you've obviously invested so much in development coaching, right? So bring in players who actually have that level of upside to develop into something. And yeah, you might not be great this year. Maybe. I think there's a case to be made that all these guys, do well and things go right and you win 39, 40 games as one of the youngest teams in the NBA. And it could be really exciting to watch, right? Or it can go disastrously and maybe you win 20 games and you finish bottom 5. I have no idea. I don't think that you'll finish bottom 5 because I think OG Anunoby and Onyeka Okongwu and Scotty Barnes and Precious, the defense is just too good, especially if you keep Jakob Poeltl. My God, you could become the best defensive team in the NBA. You think that's a stretch? Look at the defensive personnel here. Every guy can guard. You know what I mean? There's a lot of talent defensively here. If you get the right defensive coach and the right defensive mind to put all of this together and you get a buy-in from these dudes, I was just joking the other day, in terms of versatility, isolation, defense, holding opponents to making shots really tough, both around the rim and on the perimeter, getting out to those late contests in the corner, all those things that a lot of teams struggle to do. Hiding a weak defender. I mean, who are your weak defenders on this roster? I mean, honestly, Gary Trent and Grady Dick. That's it, right? Who are your other weak defenders? Otto is a great defender. Great. One of the greatest defenders in the NBA when he's healthy, okay? Christian Koloko, really good defender for a rookie especially, right? Onyeka Okongwu, one of the best 20 to 25 defenders in the NBA, in my opinion. Max upside, maybe a top 10 defender. OG Anunoby, in my opinion, a top 7 defender in the NBA. Scotty Barnes has great defensive tools. Didn't quite put it together last year. I think his role as an on-ball guy, kind of going over and under picks is a little bit difficult. Put him closer to the basket, watch him thrive. Let him still do that full court pickup stuff, but like let him get a little bit closer to the basket as well, where the gaps and angles aren't as exaggerated or as wide. And I think he'll do really well. So, I mean, you have a roster here, which is just full of really toolsy, versatile defenders that could really fit together. And I think you could, off of your defense, and I mean, Onyeka Okongwu, one of the understated parts about him, is also a really good rebounder. A.J Griffin is also a pretty good rebounder for a guard. Grady Dick, a really good rebounder for a guard. You are effectively replacing Fred and Pascal with everything that you need, but it's coming in a different way. So you're getting a lot of the shooting that you were getting with Fred through AJ, right? He's a better shooter than Fred VanVleet. I mean, that might be a little bit of a stretch. He's in theory a better shooter. His upside is higher as a shooter because he's bigger. But let's just say you're replacing 90% of Fred's gravity and shooting with AJ Griffin and Grady Dick. Okay, so you're putting that together. Let's say Onyeka Okongwu, right, and Jakob Poeltl for a full season cover up so much of the defense. And Dennis Schroeder, point of attack, Jalen McDaniels, just as a toolsy defender, are replacing some of the guys that you were playing that maybe weren't the greatest defenders. Like Fred VanVleet as a team defender, great. Point of attack defender, very weak. So maybe Dennis Schroeder stops some of the blow-bys. Maybe by having Jakob and Onyeka as like that sort of maybe more minutes for Precious Achiuwa, all of this together creates more in terms of paint defense. I think Chris Boucher is a bit of an overrated defender. So that's another guy out, and then you get Onyeka in. Overall, yes, I can see the struggles. I totally can. And that's why I would need both of these players back. I'm not willing to trade Pascal Siakam just for Onyeka Okongwu. As much as I believe in his upside, I think that's too little. I'm not willing to trade him just for AJ Griffin. Again, as much as I believe in his shooting, his upside, there is still some injury concerns there. And if he gets injured, then this is a complete bust for you in terms of, the trade and you don't have your pick. So I would need both those guys back. It's really two cracks at two guys that I perceive to be top 10 type pick talents. And if you get both those guys, then you have two cracks at a starter level player with max level all-star upside. And I think that that's a really good return. It's not as glamorous as 5 picks. It's not, right? It's not as glamorous as, 3 pick swaps and 2 picks, something that makes fans excited. But realistically, it's 2 guys who are definitely going to be, in my opinion, top 10 players for their respective draft classes. They're both very young. And, who knows? You get DeAndre Hunter, maybe you unlock something in him. I have no idea. Maybe you ship him off to a third team, and maybe that team values DeAndre Hunter because he provides exactly what they need instead of, the Raptors, who have variations of better versions of DeAndre Hunter on their team already. And maybe that team is also able to give you a pick. Who knows? Notice I have not asked for any picks in this trade so far because I think that would be being greedy, in my opinion, and probably unreasonable. Because Pascal Siakam is an expiring contract and there's no assurance that he will sign. But the minute he will agree to re-sign with the Hawks, I think the trade value makes complete sense. And then maybe you're able to extract even a first-round pick from them. Anyway, that's been my take on this. Let me just get some comments here. And okay, let's check this out. We the North saying you don't trade away your best player for peanuts. Well, define peanuts. Hey Rob, does Passing Control on his YouTube channel make you feel any way about how this off season might go? No, it does not. That's funny. I mean, yeah, it's taking long to trade him because it's complicated. And I think that while the Raptors may like some of the Atlanta Hawks' younger pieces, they may not like Clint Capella and DeAndre Hunter enough to take those guys on. So maybe you're just looking for a third team to come on board. Oh, we already addressed that comment. Is Grady playing today? If not, I won't waste my time watching. Are the Raptors Summer League? Are they playing today? There's no game today. I think the game will be tomorrow or the next day. That is true. Wait, is that true? I know there was a quick snap to Scotty Barnes in the beginning. And that's very strange. I don't know, because we're slightly smarter than you are. I don't know. We have a crystal ball. We can tell that he's not going to be injury prone. I don't know. Like, dude, he's 19 years old. Science has come really far away. Like, I mean, it's not that scary in injury history. Like, relax, you know. Like, Siakam hasn't exactly been the beacon of durability the last 3 years, you know. There's been a lot of injuries for him too. Buffkin is trade eligible on August 2nd, so we'll see. I hopefully covered it after. No, they can. They can for sure. Honestly, when you put together a team that competitive, there are still guys technically in the free agency heap that would probably jump onto that team, likely because they would be able to compete with that team, right? They would make a deep playoff run. It's typically really good for your next contract. So there's a lot of guys right now who maybe missed out on mid-level money that would be willing to come onto that team if they can open up some roster spots. I think they'll be able to, for sure. Bro, I don't think if he makes All NBA, he's still not getting the super max. In my opinion, the team would be absolutely nuts to pay him that. But you know what? Like, honestly, pay what you want to pay whoever you want to pay. But I think it would actually be in his benefit to just gauge the value, right, around the league. And I mean, look, the trailer was inspiring, right? I just want to address that really quickly. It kind of gave you a full perspective on Pascal Siakam, right? This is a dude who really believes he can be a top 5 player, and he's got an entire fan base saying, nah, bro, you can't. And there's a part of me that's just rooting for him to become that player because, you know, I value hard work and hustle, and I hope that he can become that. And it would be really cool if he could become that here. That would be awesome. A top 5 player in the NBA, shoot. Like, I mean, even Scotty Barnes' most ardent supporters would have to concede that top 5 player is not a guarantee. And if you cannot guarantee that Scotty's upside, whatever you think that is better than Pascal's upside next year and the year after, well, then, you know, you probably have to shift your focus a little bit and just say, maybe we need Scotty to fit into what Pascal's doing instead of Pascal to fit in what Scotty's doing. I just think that, you know, that old adage, right? Like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, like, it's shame on me, right? I think the Raptors have given us a lot of time, right? Doesn't mean that he won't burst at this point. It does not mean that, because DeMar DeRozan peaked at 31. Thaddeus Young peaked at 31. There are guys who've peaked later in their careers, and Siakam might just be one of them. I don't know. He can go. I mean, shoot, for the Raptors' perspective, wouldn't it be crazy if playing in Atlanta is what unlocks this dude? And maybe that's the big fear for a lot of Raptor fans, is that he'll go to Atlanta and he'll be like a top 7 MVP candidate. He's certainly capable of it. I just don't think that it's going to happen here. So it doesn't really matter where it happens. I just don't think it can happen here. This roster doesn't make sense around him. And, for another team looking at this, if they can really just study his film and study his game and figure out how to make him more effective than he was last year, yeah, there's a way to there's a way. I won't say top 7, top 8, top 9, whatever, but there is a way to make him almost as effective as a Donovan Mitchell. The question you have to ask yourself is, can you win with a guy who is bottom 15, right, in clutch performance in terms of field goal percentage? Can you win with a guy like that? Well, if you're a team with Trae Young, you don't have to. You don't have to. You have DeJounte Murray and Trae Young to create those opportunities. Maybe Pascal can just be a massive floor raiser for some team out there. If you're a team like the Dallas Mavericks, why wouldn't you want to, try and get in on that? If you're a team like the Orlando Magic, if you really believe in Franz and Paolo, whatever, I mean, you have technically the biggest team in the NBA, right? Why not make Pascal your 4? If Franz is your 2, right? I mean, you're just compounding your shooting issues. Obviously, they need shooting, but I don't know. It's worth thinking about for sure. Okay, let's get to some super chats. Thank you very much, Julia and Death 4K. So, Julia, thanks a lot for the super chat. Death 4K, really happy that I'm a sub. Everything you say, been saying for years, and I'm tired of Raptors making wrong choices and disrespecting our young stars. Thanks, man. Thanks a lot for the super chat. Obviously, these super chats add up, so I really appreciate it. Yeah, man, that anthem in the beginning was very fitting to what we're trying to do. We're trying to stand up for what is true and what is right. We're trying to hopefully add some value to the collective consciousness in the Raptors space. We're hopefully giving some pretty decent arguments for some of these takes and giving some data for it to back it up. And, to the 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people that watch these videos, that's, something to take forward into the next discussion that you have on some other forum or some other group, whether it be Real GM or Facebook group or Twitter or wherever. And that is how these ideas spread, right? And that could sound very dangerous too, right? And it is very dangerous when, the media starts propagating this myth of Pascal being an MVP caliber guy, and then a year later, we're talking about how the Indiana Pacers won't give up Andrew Nembhard for him. You would have to assume that for both things to have been true at the same time, that Pascal Siakam would have had to tear his ACL and, I don't know, like get arrested or something. Like for his value to go from, oh, he's an MVP to you can't get Andrew Nembhard for him. If both things are true, then one thing is not true. It cannot be true. So the narrative on this channel has always been he's not that level of player. He will, however, at some point put up stats like he's that level of player. He's been given the role that he's that level of player, and he may be given money like he's that level of player. And I don't think he's that level of player. So it's important. I think that it is important to dissect that. It's not hate. It's not hate. There was this dude I pointed out on a Facebook group. I pointed out Scotty's clutch scoring. He was top 7 in the NBA in terms of clutch field goal percentage at like 54.5 or 56%. And Pascal was like at 37% or something, and Fred was like at 23%. And they were just like, yo, you're hating on Pascal. And it's like, bro, it's not hating. If you point out Scotty's, mid-range percentage, that's not hating. If you point it out without context, it is hating. If you don't point out the variables that are affecting it, then it's hating. The variables that are affecting Pascal are that he has a lack of spacing around him. Well, you haven't really fixed that. You still have Jakob Poeltl, you still have Scotty Barnes. So you're sort of setting this guy up to fail. So if you want to see what Pascal would do as more of a secondary creator instead of primary creator, he's not going to do that here. If you want to see what Pascal would do with a little bit more floor spacing and not having to play with a center who is clogging the paint and a wing who cannot space for him, well, then he's not going to have that here. So if you're setting the dude up to fail, you might as well try to set him up to succeed somewhere else. That's kind of my point. Anyways, thank you all for the super chats. Thank you for watching. Yeah, we're going to try to get a couple of videos out next week on some of the young players, some of the young prospects. I think after the 5th Summer League game is over, I don't know when that is. I think it's tomorrow or the next day. We will definitely then look into what we saw in Summer League, right? I didn't see a hell of a lot. Obviously, I liked what I saw from Grady, and I really liked what I saw yesterday, at least from Joe Wieskamp. But overall, I think there's a really good chance, as much as I like him, that Joe Wieskamp will not have his contract picked up. And, the Raptors already have a bit of a glut of, players on their roster, and Blake Murphy released a really great cap breakdown. So definitely go and check out Blake's Twitter feed and go check that out. It's pretty informative in terms of what the Raptors can and can't do with the roster. And naturally, when a trade does go down, this will change drastically. But I think right now, where the Raptors are in terms of cap space and whatever is what is also impacting the trade as well, right? They are hard capped technically by using their mid-level and their biannual. They are technically hard capped. So there's certain limits to, how much they can take back in a trade. They cannot go over, I believe, the second apron. They can't touch that second apron. So they're hard capped that way. So there's a lot of things that the new CBA has complicated. And I think long term, if you're really thinking about what has shifted for the Raptors, I think once the details of the new CBA came out, we really saw just how difficult it would be to retain Pascal Siakam while building a competitive roster around him, right? That's great. She-Wolf, game 5 is Saturday at 3 p.m. versus the Warriors. Oh, that should be fun. That should be really fun. Van, thank you so much, man. Keep up the great content. We're here for it. Great analysis and always on point. Keep it up, dude. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. And once again, I got to start doing these lives like in a room that's blacked out, because I have like different lighting setups coming at me, and probably this lighting is terrible. But anyways, thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. Hit the sub up, hit subscribe. We are closing in, hopefully soon, on 7,000 subscribers. The stated goal of this channel is 10,000 subscribers by game 1. Let's get it. Obviously going to have to release some really great content, more than lives, just really great content coming up. If you haven't checked out the neuroscience video, I am going to implore you to definitely check it out. It's not as nerdy as it sounds on surface, and it's a really good conversation. I promise you, I've not heard of anyone watching it and not loving it. I've received dozens and dozens of comments, private messages on Facebook about how much people learned from it, how much it helped them with their coaching, with their athletic training, etc. So it is the last video, technical video on this channel. Definitely go check that out. Alrighty. Take care, guys. Have a good one. Peace. Just Dope saying, oh, Jonathan, you're going to love it, man. You specifically, if I told you I made that video specifically for you, it wouldn't be completely a lie. Trust me. Like, you're going to love it. Neuroscience video was cool. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, definitely. You know what? Share it. Share it on Twitter. It helps. Share it on, wherever you want. Share it. Once again, the lighting in that video was absolutely shit. You wouldn't believe it, but I actually light people for a living. I'm a cinematographer, and somehow every time it comes to lighting myself, I'm just, nope, don't care. I'm a rebel, man. I'm a total rebel. All right. Oh my God, you're back? Dude, I swear to God, like, do you have like 6 channels or something? Someone ban this dude. Why are you here? Why can I not ban you? I'm trying to ban you. Hide. There we go. Okay. Ban. Gone. Sorry. That's gone like way too many. Call it like way too far, right? Like, this dude is just, it's been kind of like, it's been egging on for a while. There's been some let's call it like derogatory things said about certain other members of this chat, and I'm not for it. I'm telling you, man, I'm at a point in my life where I'm just not dealing with anything extra. Like, it's not hate, it's nothing, it's just a boundary. All right, take care, guys. Have a good one.